back. This is Boomer Life on CIL 650.
And welcome back to Boomer Life here on CIL 650 as we continue our conversation with the folks from Neurokinetics Clinic in Vancouver. Our guests in studio are Dr. Philippe Souvestre, the president and founder of Neurokinetics in Vancouver. Sonia Dale is the clinic manager, and J.C. Gordon is the clinic's director of liaison and logistics. And we're talking about performance enhancement and restoration. And you know, boomers, we're kind of a different crowd. We've been doing stuff differently, JC, and you're a card-carrying boomer just like I am, and so is Philippe. Sonia, on the other hand, has yet to enter the club and is in no hurry whatsoever, and nobody's blaming you. But, you know, boomers, we've always done, ever since the 50s and 60s, we've done everything differently. We've done things our way, and by gosh, we're also rewriting the book on aging. Boomers these days are certainly fitter than our parents were at our age, and, I think a large number of us intend to stay fit by continuing to take on challenges, just doing things that keep you energized. And in some cases, we are people looking to keep that edge. Sonia was talking earlier about people who call up and they're just a little nervous. They're concerned. They feel like they're losing that edge, Dr. Philippe. And so when a person comes to Neurokinetics and isn't particularly suffering from a traumatic injury, so there's not a lot of brain issues to deal with, but that person is looking to maintain a certain high level physical activity, and if anything, to be able to, even at boomer age, improvement, to constantly challenge oneself. What can you at Neurokinetics do for people who just look to keep that edge nice and sharp? Thank you very much.
This is a very good question. We look for identifying what has been eroding this capability of energy that underlies performance.
Okay,
so
you want to keep your edge. Why do you think you're losing it, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
So there are many ways to get there. It could be a physical issue, even mild, which on the long term will erode the coping capabilities, and that will be still below the threshold of awareness, and we basically lose a part of our sensory motor capabilities, tuning capabilities, dexterity capabilities, and it is in total unawareness about that.
Okay. Now, is part of that, though, because we're talking boomers here, so as one ages, no matter how resistant we may be to the idea, certain things in one's body just don't do things as fast as we used to be able to, and yet if that's not enough of a reason to feel like you're losing your edge, is it?
Okay. There is a two-layer answer here.
Okay.
First of all, we cannot deny that as we get older, we get wiser. And this is.
Oh, I thought you were going to say creakier, but wiser. I like much better. Okay.
We get wiser as we all learn from our lessons on the way. Somehow, this said, aging is a reality.
Sure.
It wouldn't be exact to deny that. Beside that, there is a new paradigm that we have learned from state-of-the-art brain physiology, which shows that brain control dysfunction that are increasingly coming into the picture of even a well-being and performing individual because of the amount of erosions I just mentioned earlier,
sure,
will begin to underlie and weaken our cognitive processing, which is the software the brain uses to substantiate anything else.
So even though there may not be a real noticeable or identifiable a physical issue, you're suggesting that at all times it's always partly mental.
It is not mental. Cognition is not a mental thing. Cognition is what people in the street calls the body-mind connection.
Okay.
It is rather a software, a processing. It goes from a cellular pattern to a systemic pattern, so it is all up and through the hierarchy that makes us up anatomically and physiologically.
Okay.
So to keep things simple, it is the between the physical and the mental that is the issue. It is not the mental.
Okay. So, and of course, I'm using the word mental probably incredibly inappropriately, because all I was referring to was it was in some way relating to the brain as well. Your brain is involved in everything you do, like it or not, in many cases involuntarily.
Yes.
Right?
And that is a third entity of operations. The brain is the place.
Right.
Of.
So when someone comes to the clinic, to maybe get that edge back, maybe sharpen the skates, so to speak.
Right.
JC, when there is an intake process, and we'll get Sonia to walk us through that. Does every person who comes to Neurokinetics receive the same process, or if you identify yourself as being probably pretty okay health-wise, I don't have any major pain, and certainly I'm not living with chronic pain, I just want to get my edge back. Would the intake be different than a person living with a great deal of pain?
That's a great question, Sterling. At Neurokinetics, we are brain optimization specialists.
Right.
And to optimize the brain, it's the same initial pattern that we need to follow over and over again to determine where the brain is basically at this point in time. And what Dr. Philippe does in the initial assessments that we do with our patients is measures that level of dysfunction. And we, as we work with our patients, turn that dysfunction back into function, which enhances their performance and certainly helps with physical issues as well.
Okay, so Sonia, if now that we've learned that everyone who comes to Neurokinetics to see Dr. Souvestre and the rest of your team goes through essentially the same intake process. And as I recall from previous conversation, there are 3 intake occasions. 3, would you call them interviews, exams? How do you describe those meetings?
They're assessments.
Okay, assessments.
So you would start off with your first meeting or consultation, that is, to go ahead and, set up the next appointments, which are the assessment appointments. The assessments, the level 1, or the GCSA that we call it, is anywhere between 3 to 4 hours, sometimes can lead up to 5, depending upon the, medical history that we go thoroughly into, Dr. Philippe goes into thoroughly.
Right.
And then the same thing with a level 2.
So I'm sure I have to stop you. 4 to 5 hours for
Yes.
for the first meeting with the doc?
Yes.
I imagine you just absolutely shock patients.
We do.
Especially people who have been around the block and seen 24 docs in the last 2 years and an average time of maybe 10 to 15 minutes each. Suddenly, I get 4 hours
Yes.
with a doc? Are you
Yes.
kidding me? So, and that's the first of how many sessions?
That's first of 3.
3.
Yes.
So, okay. So if you feel like a little doctor deprived, boy, have we got a solution for you. So the first 3 to 4 to 5 hours.
Yes.
Again, there's a series of tests and other assessments
Yes.
going on. Can you describe some of those?
Yeah, the 3 to 4 hours, that's Dr. Philippe's time with the patient.
Right.
He also has off patient time that he does do his, collecting the data, doing his whole work behind the scenes when the patient's gone in order to determine the treatment program that is required,
Okay.
which is not even part of that. But anyhow, 3 to 4 hours is what he puts in and dedicates with that patient of their time. So thorough medical history review.
Right.
Several tests are done during that assessment time.
Okay.
Then again, they would, go home, come back the following day. We like to do the assessments a day after day pattern.
Oh, okay.
So 3 days back to back. We want to see how the body reacts to a 3-day period with the assessments. How, is chronic fatigue a factor from the 3 assessments? Want to see the different symptoms out of the assessments that happen or occur.
These tests that you described taking place in the first assessment session,
Yes.
do they get repeated in numbers 2 and 3 as well?
Some of them do, and there's a reason for that as well. In lay language, non-medical terms, I will
Please.
say, I will say is it's kind of also like a memory thing for us as well. If, we are well, we drive somewhere, we will say, hey, I remember going there, even though we may not remember a certain address.
Mm-hmm.
For example, hey, I know it's past this turn, there you go, boom, I'm going to get there.
Right.
Whereas, if you repeat something with a person who's not so well, they can repeat it the second day, which is the second assessment.
Right.
However, the third, they will not.
Oh, really?
The third is actually where we get the results that we are looking for. And it's a proven fact that Dr. Philippe has come to this decision after 30 plus years of experience that he has. So and this is what we do as well in our clinic, and it works quite well, I would say.
So Dr. Philippe, after having seen a typical patient for, as I'm just doing the math here, anywhere from maybe 12 to 15 hours in these 3 organized assessment meetings, then and only then, after you've gone through your pattern of assessment, are you in a position to begin to organize a program for that individual. How long does it take you? As Sonia just said, you've been at this for a while now, but how long recognizing the individual needs of the people that you meet in these assessments, typically how long would it take you to sit down and design a therapy program for a patient?
It is an ongoing process, starting the first hour of the initial step of the assessment. Sonia described very well. The fact we have 3-step assessment is also to explore the patterns that may vary through time from a session A to session B and session C. And that pattern change is a key to understand brain performance vulnerability, for example, and insufficiency, about compensation or loss in controls, or a lot of things can come to the picture. So during this process, I get to understand better what are the mechanisms affected behind the performance through the testing we provide to the patient. And the repeatability of patterns or not will be a big cue. There is as much difference between this pattern between 1 session to 3 than you would have between a snapshot and a motion picture, because a snapshot will never reflect what a motion picture can show in 3 slates. So that is a very key. Now, answering your question about how long it takes to design a treatment program, it is an ongoing process through the 3-step of these things, because it is a constant discovery, and we are digging and looking for issues which are possibly underlying symptoms and the loss of performance.
I think also watching Dr. Philippe also working with a patient side by side during the 3-day process especially, I don't think there's a set number of hours I'm going to answer for him on his behalf that he puts in. It also depends, I would say, the severity of the condition. So if someone comes in, he can do a treatment process or a customized treatment program for them much sooner or quicker than someone with, a heavier, we would say, patient coming into us with a condition, because that will take him even throughout, say, a treatment program he's designed. That would take him, say, maybe 10 hours, 15 hours, 20 hours for him to design. He's still adding things along the way. So it doesn't really ever end.
J.C. Gordon, just before we take the break here, you mentioned something a few minutes ago. You said Neurokinetics Clinic is all about brain optimization. What do you mean by brain optimization?
This is not going to be a medical answer.
That's good. That's fine. I'm not a doctor. We've already got one doctor in the room.
We got one doctor here.
Please, on behalf of those of us who haven't attended medical school, what do you mean by brain optimization?
Very simply, optimizing the brain allows anybody to be a peak performer. To achieve life, to do life to the best of their capabilities and ability.
So that would, and I'm in a very non-medical way interpreting that to mean freeing the brain of encumbrances to charge forward and do what it was best designed to do. I'm getting a kind of an affirmative nod from Dr. Philippe. Am I on the right track?
Yes, you are.
It's restoring the brain, I would say, to help heal the body and mind and gain its function back. That's the best way I would describe it.
We have some stories to tell, too. We're going to take a quick break here, and these are good examples. Some of them are professional athletes, names you might recognize, hockey players, football players, and so on, and others are just regular folks who needed Dr. Philippe's help. And just before we take the break, you wanted to jump in one more time?
Yes, just to add a little qualification on the definition of what is a treatment program as we understand it. You may compare a treatment program as a flight plan for an aircraft. And a flight plan is determined according to what is seen at first, but may be altered through time, looking for what is the best to to restore physiology back.
Right, because you file a flight plan and you intend to go from A to B on this line, but sometimes weather and other things cause you to get to B in a slightly different way than you had originally planned, and that's the kind of flexibility you must bring to the table with you every day.
Exactly.
Interesting stuff. Our guest from Neurokinetics Clinic in Vancouver in the Highcroft Medical Center at 3195 Granville Street and online at neurokinetics.com. Back with lots more right after this.
Canada's only weekly radio show dedicated to the baby boomer lifestyle. This is Boomer Life on CIL 650.